Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another JaruJaruJ reaction. It's been a while since I've watched one of their videos, and this is one of those videos that I've been requested to watch, again, by Kawaii Cat. So, this is the meaning of Hyperlink Blocked. So, yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this video is gonna be about our beloved Spamton. But all theories analyzed, so... So is Jaru going to be looking over their theories or looking over other people's theories? I mean, we're going to have to say, because this video is, over an hour long, so you know what that means. There is a good chance this video will, in fact, be split up into multiple parts. But this video is, over an hour long, so it's, there's got to be a lot to it. The only thing I could potentially think of is, the whole idea that the secret bosses of Deltarune are going to be ones that have had, like, some exposure to Gaster, or have been told something by Gaster, resulting in them going mad, and, they're trying to spread that knowledge to other people, and then the Hyperlink Blocked is just their universe literally not letting Spamton talk about what he's trying to talk about, because, what he's talking about is... would break reality or something like that. Sort of similar to if you like think of like Lovecraftian mythology, where quite literally their language is quite literally like the human body is incapable of making the sounds to make it, so it's literally unspeakable. I mean, other than that, I don't really have a potential idea where this could go, so I'm actually kind of excited. Again, I'm sorry, this is probably one of those ones I probably should have watched a while ago, but again, it's just, I hesitate to watch long videos just because of the time commitment it takes to edit them down. But yeah, we're here now, I'm here now, so let's get this thing started then, shall we? So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video link to my Let's Play of the day, and yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Hello, my name is Jaru. Today, I'm talking about Deltarune. There will be major spoilers for both Deltarune and Undertale, so please play them both before watching this. Today's video will be the second part of a series in which I analyze the one and only Spamton. Part 1 was all about analyzing his character, story, and themes, while today we are going to be analyzing the mysterious Hyperlink Blocked.
I'm really, given the whole trouble I had when I was doing reactions to Half-Bred Chaos and stuff like that, where they'd seemingly have a lot of like, oh, this video is secretly a part 2. I'm now, if it's required, I'll watch, that video later, okay?
After we solve Hyperlink Blocked in this video, we'll do a full analysis of all his dialogue in the next part. We're going to keep this intro short.
There's going to be another part?
Because we've got a lot of theories to discuss.
Short and sweet, eh?
Before we dive in, I'd just like to mention my Ko-fi. If you'd like to directly support the channel with a one-time donation, Ko-fi is the way to do it. We've currently got a donation goal on there for me to do a blind playthrough and video on One Shot. Alternatively, if you'd like to donate more regularly, Patreon is also an option. Both go a long way towards keeping this channel up and running. If you can't afford it, that's fine too. Your viewership alone is a blessing I will always be grateful for. Without further ado, let's dive into the many theories surrounding Spamton's most enigmatic expression. First, some backstory. Hyperlink Blocked is one of the phrases used by Spamton, but unlike Kungadero or Cromer, there's no clear consensus in the Deltarune community on what Hyperlink Blocked actually means.
It's quite literally blocking spam. He's trying to send you a hyperlink, a link, set up in text, and, whatever system, again, possibly the universe, is literally blocking it so that you can't interact with it.
Since Spamton mentions Hyperlink Blocked 12 times over the course of Chapter 2, we really need to figure this out before we can begin to analyze his dialogue in full. I asked my viewers for all their theories regarding what they think Hyperlink Blocked means, and I'm going to be analyzing all 29 of their theories before giving my own interpretation at the very end.
29?
If you've watched my Night or Shadow Crystal videos, you'll be familiar with this format. But
that's another, Who is the Knight? That's another video I need to watch. Ah!
But this this time I'm doing something a little different. Rather than just going through all the theories at random, I've decided to organize them into a flowchart. This chart shows the chains of logic that the community has followed to arrive at these assorted theories. And I think going through this chart step by step will help give you an overview of the conversation that surrounds this topic. I'll go more in depth with these theories shortly, but let's go ahead and introduce all of them to you before I begin analyzing them. Starting at the top of the flowchart, we arrive at the first question that any Deltarune theorist must ask when analyzing this phrase. Does hyperlinked blocked have any deeper meaning? Many members of the community have said no, and that leads us to what I've dubbed the surface meaning theories. This category includes catchphrase theory, smurf theory, hyperlink theory, and inappropriate joke theory.
Okay, so catchphrase theory, I'm gonna want a little bit of clarification on that. Smurf theory? Is that literally gonna, like, it's talking about as in, like, you know, the Smurfs where they just throw the word Smurf in randomly for replacing different words? Okay, I mean, equating Spamton to a Smurf, I mean, he is short, very odd looking. That could potentially mean that, you know, that whole joke in the Spamton sweepstakes video that, you know, there are multiple Spamtons where the only difference is what their middle initial is. Oh god, that could actually prove that theory correct. Oh no. Hyperlink theory, you know, being, I'm going to imagine quite literally, that it involves, you know, Spamton trying to spread spam, like I said before. Inappropriate joke theory. That one's rather self-explanatory. I don't need to really think that hard about that one.
All of these theories argue that Hyperlink Blocked doesn't have any profound or hidden meaning, but they disagree on what the surface level meaning actually is. Catchphrase theory holds that Hyperlink Blocked is just a wacky catchphrase. It holds no real meaning and is just meant to be yet another funny thing that Spamton says.
Oh god, can you imagine? Instead of Hyperlink Blocked, the actual word we were supposed to be paying attention to was like Kongdadero or something like that, and that's the one piece that would just blow the entire potential story of Deltarune wide open, but just nobody's been paying attention to it.
You could say it's the Bazinga of Deltarune. Smurf theory is slightly more complex, but only because you have to know a little about the Smurfs to understand it. The Smurfs was a comic strip focused on a group of little blue creatures called Smurfs, and one of the gimmicks of the Smurfs was that they would randomly replace words in their sentences with the word Smurf. For example, a human might say an apple fell from a tree, but a Smurf, when describing the exact same thing, might say a Smurf fell from a tree. A human might think that's gibberish, but a Smurf would understand that they're talking about an apple falling from a tree. As a result, the word Smurf doesn't actually mean anything on its own, and it's just used as a replacement for regular words. This theory holds that Hyperlink Blocked follows similar rules in that it doesn't actually mean anything, and Spamton is just using it as a replacement for common terms. Hyperlink theory holds that Hyperlink Blocked is literally just talking about a hyperlink that Spamton is using to sell his merchandise. For those who aren't aware, Spamton is a darkener, and thus he is the personification of a real-world thing. In Spamton's case, he is the personification of a spam bot, which is a computer program that sends spam emails to people in an attempt to sell them things. Those emails often have hyperlinks which take you to their websites. Sometimes these websites are rather shady, and so your web browser or your antivirus software may block you from using that hyperlink in order to protect your computer. As such, this theory holds that Spamton is trying to give Chris a link to some sort of shady website, and as a result, the library computer is blocking that link because it thinks it's not trustworthy.
Which, I mean, given that Spamton, you know, is probably, you know, a good thing. Also, thinking about it, Queen is a laptop in the light world, or in real life, however you want to look at it. And potentially given that, you know, she kicked Spamton out of her mansion at one point. Whether it was purely just because he stopped being popular due to not getting Gaster's help anymore, or, you know, her being a computer also came to the realization, hey, this guy is literally a spam bot, he could hurt me, so now she's quite literally blocking every link he sends out because, you know, he's spam.
This, in turn, causes Spamton to say, Hyperlink Blocked. In short, this theory holds that Hyperlink Blocked doesn't have any deeper meaning and that it's just meant to further characterize Spamton as a living spam bot. Lastly is inappropriate joke theory, which holds that Spamton says Hyperlink Blocked because he's being censored. He's actually trying to say something inappropriate, like a curse word, but something is blocking him, hence the Hyperlink Blocked message.
Honestly, out of the four of these, out of the four of these, I believe, the hyperlink theory and catchphrase theory the most out of them.
It's the equivalent of him getting bleeped on television. That's all the surface meaning theories, but a lot of people end up going down the other path, as they believe that Hyperlink Blocked really does have some deeper meaning. This brings us to the second major question one must ask. Does the meaning come from the words Hyperlink Blocked? Some say yes, the words themselves are the important part. This brings us to the one and only non-replacement theory, aka literal theory. Literal theory holds that we are meant to read the individual pieces of Hyperlink Blocked in the most literal way possible. Hyper means to go beyond what's normal, and link means a connection. As such, Hyperlink Blocked, when read literally, means to block a connection which goes beyond what's normal.
I mean, that's a little weird, and I don't entirely buy it, but at the same time, Spamton was kind of obsessed with gaining Chris's heart-shaped object, so, potentially establishing a stronger than normal connection with, us. I mean, I could see the reasoning for it, but again, I'm not entirely buying it.
This interpretation works off the idea that Spamton hates the entity pulling his strings, and thus wants to block his connection to said entity. However, most of the theories that were submitted do not believe the words Hyperlink Blocked actually matter, and instead argue that Hyperlink Blocked is replacing the words or phrases that Spamton is actually trying to say. In other words, Spamton is trying to say something specific, but for some reason he's being forced to say Hyperlink Blocked instead. This brings us to the final question that theorists are confronted with. Is Hyperlink Blocked replacing one concept or multiple? This division between single concept theories and multiple concepts theories is built on a fundamental disagreement in the community on whether it's possible for Hyperlink Blocked to only be replacing one word. Starting with the multiple concepts theories, this branch argues that Hyperlink Blocked is used as both a noun and as an adjective, and thus it cannot be replacing just one word. Namely, while 11 out of the 12 instances of Hyperlink Blocked are used as a noun, this instance here seems to have it used as an adjective. Spamton says, "I'll get so," repeatedly, and then says Hyperlink Blocked. As such, this branch of theory crafting isn't focused on figuring out what Hyperlink Blocked specifically replaces. Instead, these theories are all about figuring out which category of topics Spamton is being prevented from discussing. The first of these is string theory. This theory holds that there is some sort of entity responsible for, metaphorically, pulling Spamton's strings.
I'm like 90% sure they went with that name specifically because it was called string theory. But the fact that you could potentially have something like in a video game called string theory and have literally nothing to do with the actual scientific theory and instead deal with quite literal strings. I really do love that. That is just so stupid and silly.
This is something Spamton is trying to break free from. However, anytime Spamton tries to discuss this entity or what it's doing to him, he is censored, and his words are replaced with Hyperlink Blocked. Missing data theory holds that there used to be some sort of secret data that Spamton gained access to, but that data has since been removed or deleted. Since Spamton is a computer program, him no longer having access to that data prevents him from discussing it, and any attempts to reference that data results in him saying Hyperlink Blocked.
Again, I could see that. Again, whatever, kind of going back to my whole theory about, about, the whole, eldritch, eldritch information that Gaster potentially told him. I could see that, just, you know, again, with Gaster gone, he doesn't have access to that information anymore. But you'd think if that was the case, they wouldn't specify it being blocked, because blocked potentially could mean that whatever's there is still there. It's just literally you're being stopped from accessing it. While if something was missing, you'd think that, you know, the program that is Spamton would be able to specify saying, oh, you know, missing data, or, you know, something of that of that sort. Toby Fox theory. What did I pause on?
Toby Fox theory holds that Hyperlink Blocked is what appears when Toby Fox is preventing Spamton from spoiling future chapters. This is more of a meta theory. And lastly, there's...
I mean, again, given, you know, how Toby Fox is, what he's quite literally the god of this world, I could very much see that being quite literally the case. He's just, you know, Toby Fox is just an admin saying, oh, spoilers, and he's pushing the button just on Spamton. He has on his board control thing of, like, the universe, he just has a specific block Spamton button on it just to push it whenever Spamton's speaking.
There's mental block theory. This theory holds that Spamton experienced a traumatic event so painful that he suppressed his memories of everything involving that event. As such, anytime he attempts to discuss said event, his own mental block prevents him, and he instead says Hyperlink Blocked. That wraps up the multiple concepts theories, but there is a sizable chunk of the community that believes Hyperlink Blocked is only replacing a singular word or phrase, although what exactly it's replacing is heavily debated. I'll discuss these theories in greater detail later, but I'll quickly run through the list. The options my community suggested for what Hyperlink Blocked could be replacing includes determination, freedom, EXP, power, choices, love, drugs, free will, chaos, coffee, control, big shot autos, big shot soda, peepus, some currently unknown power, happiness, death, destruction, strength, or something new.
Okay, so a coffee? That's a little weird. I mean, I know I'm not a coffee drinker, so I mean, that doesn't really affect me, but still, it's very weird. But also, the idea that potentially, you know, it's being blocked by some as of yet unknown power or something phrase, that kind of makes me wonder, do you think that maybe in, like, a future chapter, if Hyperlink Blocked is blocking Spamton from talking about a specific power or something that we have not encountered yet in the game, do you think that if you played the game normally, got to the point in the game where you actually do discover that power, and then went back and played Chapter 2 over again, that Hyperlink Blocked would be replaced with whatever Spamton was actually talking about in the first place? Because, oh hey, they already know about this thing, it doesn't have to be blocked anymore.
And with that last branch of logic summarized, we have covered the whole flowchart. You should now have a solid idea of what the different schools of thought are regarding Hyperlink Blocked. And now that you've been given the overview, it's time to give my thoughts on how well or poorly these theories actually work. Let's start this breakdown by looking at every instance in which Hyperlink Blocked is used, as that should give us some insight into what attributes the term possesses. The first two instances of Hyperlink Block occur in Spamton's initial conversation with Chris. That's right, now's your chance to be a big shot, and I have just the thing you need. That's Hyperlink Blocked. You want it. You want Hyperlink Blocked, don't you? In this scene, Spamton is trying to make a deal with Chris. He believes Chris wants something called Hyperlink Blocked, and this is seemingly what Spamton is promising to give Chris if they help Spamton with his plan. This shows that Hyperlink Blocked is something that can be given or acquired, and it shows that Spamton believes he knows of a way to get it for Chris.
Okay, if the Hyperlink Blocked was specifically blocking, like, the word freedom or something like that, I could potentially see it that way. Because freedom or free, or, you know, just the topic of freedom for Spamton. I mean, hey, I have just the thing you need. Freedom! Hey, I know you want it, don't you? Freedom! And then later on in the store, I'll be so free. I could potentially see that. But how does that play out with the rest of, the hyperlink blocks?
This also establishes that, at least for now, Hyperlink Blocked is a noun. The next instance of Hyperlink Blocked occurs in the initial Spamton battle. Spamton is explaining to Chris that he is in need of a little charity, and he goes on to clarify what he means by charity when he says, "That's right, and I don't mean money. I'm a salesman. I was never in it for the money. I was only in it for the freedom to make your own deal."
Wait, never mind. Freedom is right there. Okay, never mind. That completely just throws what I said out the water.
To call your own shots, and sometimes in the morning, a little Hyperlink Blocked. In this interaction, Spamton is explaining that he wants freedom, and he lists what he'd like to do with that freedom. This includes making his own deals, calling his own shots, and sometimes having a little Hyperlink Blocked in the morning. This suggests that Hyperlink Blocked can exist in quantities, as Spamton just wants a little of it.
Okay, so now I'm seeing where the whole coffee thing comes in. Okay, I wasn't anticipating that. But then that again, at the store, it's like, I'll be so coffee? What? Is that like shorthand or weird speak for like energized or something like that?
And it implies that it is something you choose to consume or use or experience in some way during the morning. The next Hyperlink Blocked occurs a little later in the fight when Spamton says, "Don't worry kids, I'm an honest man. I just need your account details and the number on the back. Then you can enjoy 1,000 free Chromer." What? You don't need it? That's a real big shot move, kid. You're just like me. Desperate. But we know what we want, don't we? Wild prizes, hot single, 100 customer, and most of all, Hyperlink Blocked. In this interaction, Spamton tries to scam Chris into giving him their credit card, but Chris declines, which impresses Spamton. This in turn leads to him saying that Chris is just like him, in that they are both desperate, but also in that they both know what it is they want. Spamton then lists the things he believes Chris and himself desire, which includes Hyperlink Blocked. He actually emphasizes that they want Hyperlink Blocked most of all, suggesting this is the highest priority for Spamton and Chris, at least from Spamton's point of view. After that first battle, Spamton departs while saying, "Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Hyperlink Blocked." This is, of course, a funny reference to YouTubers, but it's also Spamton reminding Chris of the terms of their deal. If Chris continues to support Spamton in his endeavor, then he will provide Chris with Hyperlink Blocked. Later on, in Spamton's shop, he starts rambling about how incredible the Neo robot is, and how great it's going to be if they successfully acquire it. He says, "Chris, that little nipper is our one-way ticket to make you big. Make me big. Before you know it, we will be taking a ride around town on our special Congadero, vacationing and burning acid while you soak in the Hyperlink Blocked." This suggests Hyperlink Blocked is something you can soak in, although he could be speaking metaphorically.
Though again, I'm seeing more and more why potentially coffee might, people think that coffee might be the word that's being blocked. At the same time, why would coffee be blocked? That's just such a weird, out of all the things you could stop somebody from talking about, why would it be coffee?
Spamton also mentions vacationing and burning acid, which is presumably a reference to the acid river in Queen's Mansion, which is only accessible to the highest members of society. The fact that Spamton is bringing this up seems to imply that he wants to reclaim the wealth and status that he used to possess. But more importantly, by mentioning it in the same line where he describes Chris soaking in the Hyperlink Blocked, this suggests that reclaiming his old glory is as important to him as gaining Hyperlink Blocked is to Chris. Or at the very least, this is Spamton describing the benefits that the two will enjoy should his plan succeed. Later on, Spamton continues to ramble about all the benefits the Neo robot will bring while also reminiscing about his past. He says, "I used to be nothing but the email guy. Now I'm the it burns, ow, stop, help me, it burns guy. Amazed at this amazing transformation, you too can have a communion with unintelligible laughter. Soon I'll even surpass that damned clown around town. But unlike him, I'm gonna shoot for the sky and get on the path to the big one. I'll get so.
Hyperlink blocked, yeah.
I'll get so. Hyperlink blocked. The main takeaway from this dialogue is that Spamton believes accomplishing his goal and gaining the Neo robot will let him accomplish many things, including becoming or acquiring a great deal of Hyperlink Blocked. Notably, this line is the main piece of evidence that those in the multiple concepts branch of the flowchart use as proof that Hyperlink Blocked can't just stand for one thing. This is because normally Hyperlink Blocked is used as a noun, but in this sentence, Spamton says, I'll get so hyperlinked blocked, which could be interpreted as hyperlink blocked being used as an adjective.
Though then again, also, I mean, theoretically, I mean, we have seen, you know, Spamton speak, I was gonna say broken English, but like, we have seen his speech patterns just be broken in general. So, I mean, they're quite literally, given that, you know, he was like, I'll get so, like he's glitching out or he's broken or like he's like a broken record that's constantly skipping. I mean, potentially he could have just jumped over the word much, like, we'll get so much hyperlink blocked instead of, you know, we'll get so, you know.
Side note, upon leaving Spamton's shop, there's a chance he'll once again say, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Hyperlink Blocked. Upon returning with the empty disc, Spamton says, Chris, you did it! You funky little worm! You brought me the disc! Hochi mama! I can feel that smooth taste already! Now Chris, don't be greedy. Hand over the disc. Then we will transfer my Hyperlink Blocked. Then, Chris, after, this is very, very important, go back and put the disc back where you got it. Do that and you have my special guarantee I will pass my savings on to you. Every big, every shot, every hyperlink blocked, all yours, Chris. So, what do you say, big shot? Warning, if you consent to the terms and agreements, our store is permanently closing down. Now, there is a lot to break down here, as not only are there two separate instances of hyperlinked blocked, but also the term is being used in a new way here. In this exchange, Spamton is explaining to Chris that he is going to transfer himself onto the disk so that Chris can upload him into the Neo robot. However, quite noticeably, he refers to what's getting transferred as his hyperlink blocked. This suggests that hyperlink blocked is either a part of him, or it's in his possession in such a way that it also gets uploaded.
Soul? Maybe? I mean, I could... Though then again, he did refer to the Chris' soul as a heart-shaped object. Or wait, no. Are we classifying the soul in-game as Chris's soul? Or just the way we control Chris? I honestly, I watch so many of these things, I forget sometimes.
He then says that he will give Chris his life savings and that this will include every hyperlink blocked. Whether this hyperlink blocked he's promising to give Chris is the same hyperlink blocked that he's uploading onto the disk is unclear. But this dialogue is definitely a major step forwards in the pursuit of narrowing down whatever it is that hyperlink blocked represents. The 12th and final instance of hyperlink blocked only occurs during the Snowgrave route, aka the weird route. During the final battle with Spamton Neo, he says, I remember when you were just a little sponge, sleeping at the bottom of a dumpster. I gave you everything I had. My life advice. I told you 4 left and asked you buy or don't buy. I gave you my commemorative ring for the price of my favorite year. And this is how you repay me? Treating me like DLC? No, I get it. It's you and that Hochi mama. You've been making, haven't you? You've been making hyperlink blocked. And now that you have your own supply, you don't need me. I was too trusting, too honest. I've always been a man of the peepus, a real peepus person. I should have known you would have used my ring for evil. Oh, right. That's why I sold it to you. You think making frozen chicken with your side chick is gonna let you drink up that sweet, sweet freedom sauce? Well, you're bleeping right. right. But don't blame me when you're crying in a broken home, wishing you let your old pal Spamton kill you. There are three main takeaways from this monologue with regards to the meaning of Hyperlink Blocked. Firstly, the term is once again being referenced as the thing that Chris wants. The only difference is that Chris isn't relying on Spamton to provide them with Hyperlink Blocked in this route, as they have instead found their own supply.
So again, that pretty much takes coffee off the table if we're focusing on the hyperlink block only means one word. So at this point, it's pointing, at least in my perspective, it's pointing more towards, hyperlink blocking a bunch of stuff as opposed to just a single thing. Unless doing the Snowgrave route somehow gives Chris a lifetime supply of coffee, the jury's still out on how that's possible.
The second reveal is that Hyperlink Blocked can be made, and that Chris has been doing so during the Snowgrave route. And the third thing to take note of is the way Spamton ties in our behavior during the Snowgrave route with the creation of Hyperlink Blocked. Spamton states that Chris having Noelle freeze Darkners, and specifically having her freeze Birdly, will grant Chris freedom, and that this is somehow also contributing to the creation of Hyperlink Blocked. This is implied because Spamton is seemingly referring to Noelle when he says Hochi Mama in this line. He later refers to Noelle by this name again during the Spamton Q&A, further reinforcing this interpretation of this dialogue. We've now discussed all the instances of Hyperlink Blocked in Deltarune,
soaked in, yeah.
And after hearing all that, you're probably starting to draw some conclusions of your own regarding what Hyperlink Blocked is all about.
It's not coffee, I can tell you that much.
I've certainly drawn some conclusions of my own, so let's go ahead and start dissecting the theories in this flowchart. Starting from the top, the category of theories that I most thoroughly disagree with are the surface meaning theories. This whole branch believes that Hyperlink Blocked has no deeper meaning, and I simply cannot agree with that. Hyperlink Blocked is at the core of Chris and Spamton's relationship, as it is what Spamton has promised Chris in exchange for their help. If they were more inconsistent with the usage of Hyperlink Blocked, I might be willing to dismiss it as meaningless, but Spamton is extremely consistent with this term. It is always used to refer to something that he and Chris want, and as something that he is going to provide Chris as a reward. Just the fact that this is the reward Spamton is promising makes this one of the most important elements of the Spamton plotline. So even when it comes to the baseline assumptions of this branch, I'm already disagreeing, and as we look at the individual theories, my disagreement only grows. The catchphrase theory does not work.
No, very much so.
Just doesn't use Hyperlink Blocked the way you would use a catchphrase.
Going down the weird route gives Chris an unlimited supply of catchphrases. Like, do it, or yes, or proceed.
A catchphrase should be used in a variety of contexts, it should be entertaining or amusing, it should be catchy, and it should be fairly simple in terms of its meaning. Hyperlink Blocked fits none of that criteria.
Yeah,
it's only used in one specific context, it's not a funny or wacky term, it's not particularly catchy, and it's inherently vague and abstract in terms of its meaning. Furthermore, Spamton already has a catchphrase. It's Big Shot. He brings up Big Shot constantly, his theme music is called Big Shot, his dream was to become a big shot, other people refer to him as a big shot, and the main ability you get when fighting Spamton Neo is the power to fire a big shot. This is 100% his catchphrase, and you can tell because it actually fits the criteria of a catchphrase. It's used in a variety of contexts, it's very silly and amusing, it's very memorable and catchy, and it has a very simple meaning. Spamton has a lot of strange mannerisms, but calling Hyperlink Blocked his catchphrase is going too far in my opinion.
Spamton, are you okay? You're a little. I think you may need to defrag there for a little bit there, buddy.
Smurf theory just doesn't work in general. For starters, one of the main rules of using Smurf in a sentence is that you have to be able to tell what Smurf actually means using context clues. For example, when this Smurf says he'll Smurf you this present, you can tell he means give you this present. For a term to work under Smurf rules, you have to still be able to tell what the term means, and Hyperlink Blocked does not work that way. If you could easily tell
Very
what
much so,
Hyperlink
no.
Blocked meant purely from context clues, then I wouldn't have to do this sort of lengthy analysis. Furthermore, much like with catchphrase theory, if Spamton is replacing common words with Hyperlink Blocked, then he should be using it in more context. Spamton never replaces any obviously normal words with Hyperlink Blocked, which makes Smurf theory dubious at best. Hyperlink theory doesn't work, largely because it relies on the assumption that Spamton is trying to link Chris to some sort of shady website. This theory might seem plausible in the normal route, but it really doesn't work once you get to Snowgrave.
Again, Snowgrave gives Chris an unlimited lifetime supply of shady websites at their own disposal.
How could Chris be making Hyperlink Blocked on their own if Hyperlink Blocked is just some random website? Chris never accesses the internet at any point during this route, so this interpretation of Hyperlink Blocked just doesn't really make much sense. Inappropriate joke theory falls short for much of the same reasons.
Quite literally, yeah.
Uses this term too consistently and too specifically for it to just be some generic joke that's getting censored. Furthermore, Spamton already has a phrase that he uses when he's cursing or using other foul language. It's this phrase here, where the letters are replaced with random symbols. This is a much more common way to show a character being censored in a text format. And since Spamton uses this sort of censorship, it seems superfluous for both this and Hyperlink Blocked to mean the exact same thing. And again, Hyperlink Blocked is at the center of Spamton's relationship with Chris, so it being something as meaningless as an inappropriate joke just doesn't fly with me. That's all the surface meaning theories covered. In case it weren't clear, I do think that Hyperlink Blocked holds some deeper meaning, which brings us to the next stop on our journey: literal theory. I have a little bit of investment in this theory, as I think I may have been the one to popularize it when I brought it up in a previous video. I should clarify that while I may have discussed this theory in the past, I wasn't necessarily saying that this is the theory that I personally believe. I was just pointing out an interesting way to look at Hyperlink Blocked that I hadn't seen brought up anywhere else. Interpreting his weird phrases literally is often a pretty good strategy with Spamton, and it makes a decent amount of sense with Hyperlink Blocked. Both Chris and Spamton have reasons for wanting to block a supernatural connection. Chris almost certainly wants to block the entity that's been possessing them, and Spamton repeatedly states that he wants to acquire freedom from the entity pulling his strings. That said, Hyperlink Blocked not only has to be something that both Chris and Spamton want, but it also has to be something that Spamton could reasonably provide Chris as a reward. This, of course, raises the question: how could Spamton provide a way for Chris to block the entity possessing them? Well, it's possible that Spamton was lying and never had any ability to help Chris in this way. However, it's also possible that Spamton's attempt to steal Chris's soul was his way of setting Chris free. After all, absorbing souls was a very prominent method of gaining power in Undertale. If Deltarune follows similar rules, then Chris and Spamton's souls fusing together could very well provide them with the power necessary to free themselves.
Oh god. 2 words: Omega Spamton.
This theory is further supported by the Snowgrave route, as in that route, Spamton states that Chris has found their own way to acquire Hyperlink Blocked. And guess what? In Undertale, the other most prominent way of gaining power was through killing enemies and gaining levels. Exactly what Chris is doing during the Snowgrave route. Both routes within this theory characterize Hyperlink Blocked as being a broad term for any method that allows you to gain power and cut your own strings. Overall, I'd say literal theory has a lot of strengths, and it certainly fits with a lot of the evidence we have. That said, it's not flawless. A couple of Spamton's lines don't entirely make sense with this interpretation. Take this line, for example. If Hyperlink Blocked is simply the ability to cut the strings of the one controlling you, then why would he only want a little of it? And why would he specify that he wants it in the morning?
And then, yeah, cut a few of the strings of the person who's controlling you in the morning.
Wouldn't he want to be free from his strings at all hours of the day?
Nah, just a little free in the morning, just as a treat.
You could sidestep this by claiming this is just Spamton being weird, but you could use that excuse for any of Spamton's dialogue. Similarly, in this line, he talks about uploading his Hyperlink Blocked, and that raises a whole pile of issues for
uploading my freedom.
If Spamton already has the ability to cut his strings, then why would he need the Neo robot? And how could he be uploading his Hyperlink Blocked onto the disk if it's an abstract concept? And why would he specifically mention that he's uploading Hyperlink Blocked when he's actually uploading his entire being? Overall, while literal theory certainly has a degree of poetic simplicity to it, this interpretation just doesn't consistently make sense in all the contexts that Hyperlink Blocked is used in. This brings us to the final two sections of the flowchart. I'll go ahead and start with the multiple concepts theories, as that's the segment I have the most critiques for. The foundation of this branch is the conclusion that Spamton uses Hyperlink Blocked as both a noun and an adjective, which supposedly proves he can't be referring to just one concept. However, the only evidence for this stance comes from this line here, in which Spamton says, "I'll get so Hyperlink Blocked." This line is the only instance in which Spamton is seemingly using Hyperlink Blocked as an adjective. In all other instances, he uses it as a noun. And respectfully, I don't think this line of logic is particularly well founded. There are multiple aspects to it that just don't hold up to scrutiny. For one, using this line as evidence only works if you completely ignore the context in which it's being used. In this scene, Spamton is glitching out and is stuck repeating the same fragment of a sentence over and over and over again. He's so thoroughly glitched that his text actually starts to overflow out of the text box. As such, it's entirely reasonable to conclude that he may have skipped over part of his sentence due to this glitch. For example, he may have been trying to say, "I'll get so much Hyperlink Blocked," but due to the glitch, he ended up skipping the word much. Heck, it's entirely possible that Spamton had a whole paragraph that he was intending to say, but the glitch made him skip all the way to the end.
I mean, quite literally, I said that same thing earlier, so, I mean, what do you know?
So already the adjective argument is pretty dubious and not well supported, but it gets worse. This argument is working off the assumption that Spamton follows the rules of grammar in general, which he most certainly does not. There are so many instances of him ignoring grammar, but one notable case occurs adjacent to Hyperlink Blocked when he says, "Do that and you have my special guarantee I will pass my savings on to you. Every big, every shot, every Hyperlink Blocked, all yours, Chris." Now, you don't need to be an English teacher to know you can't give someone every big that you own. Big is not a noun, it's an adjective.
at the same time, this whole sentence, like every big, every shop, every hyperlink block, like there's a that's not rhyming, or that's more poetry, and this like where you have the syllables of a sentence kind of lining up and kind of like bouncing off each other. What's the actual name for that? I can't remember.
So Spamton using it as a noun here doesn't make sense. If you're going to argue that Spamton follows the rules of grammar, then not only do you have to say this hyperlink blocked is an adjective, but you'll also have to argue that this big is a noun. And while I may personally find it very amusing to imagine Spamton giving Chris Big the cat, I
was literally going to say Big the cat. Come on.
Don't find that to be a particularly reasonable interpretation. I trust you can now see why I find this entire school of thought so dubious. The foundation for this branch of logic has a lot of shortcomings. However, just because the foundations are flawed doesn't mean the conclusions are necessarily wrong. So let's give the individual theories a closer look. First is the string theory, which holds that the entity pulling Spamton's strings is also preventing him from talking about anything related to said entity. Now, the main appeal of this theory is that it ties two of Spamton's mysteries together. Namely, it ties the mystery of the entity pulling his strings with the mystery of Hyperlink Blocked. However, while I generally praise theories that attempt to solve multiple mysteries simultaneously,
he literally talks about his strings earlier, and that was not blocked by Hyperlink Blocked. Yeah.
This theory is so vague in its content that it's hard to find it particularly convincing. Why do I say this theory is vague? Well, let me put it this way. String theory holds that an entity we know nothing about is using some sort of power we don't understand to control Spamton to an unspecified degree, and it is using that control to prevent Spamton from talking about a group of topics that are also unspecified, and the entity is doing all of this for some totally unknowable goal. You see the problem? This theory raises a ton of questions while not actually providing almost anything in terms of answers. Even if we plug in some mysterious entity into this theory, like Gaster or the Angel, that doesn't make the theory any more persuasive. While it's entirely feasible that one of these entities may have played some role in manipulating Spamton, they are still extremely mysterious characters which we know next to nothing about. Overall, string theory isn't fundamentally bad, and I do appreciate the attempt to solve multiple mysteries, but the extreme vagueness completely undermines its persuasiveness. That brings us to the next theory in this category, missing data theory. This theory is a little more specific, but it's still unfortunately unclear regarding who, where, how, and why Spamton gained access to this mysterious data.
One word, Gaster. That's literally what I said earlier. He had access to this data when he was in communication with Gaster, and then when Gaster stopped receiving his calls, gone to the wind.
I appreciate that it attempts to integrate Spamton's nature as a computer program.
What's the poor video transitioning Spamtons at the bottom of this? Come on, give him a break.
To its explanation of Hyperlink Blocked, but much like string theory, missing data theory raises more questions than it answers. How did Spamton access this hidden information? If he was told about this info over the phone by the phone entity, then wouldn't he still remember this data since it wasn't stored on a computer in the first place? Or is this theory arguing that the phone entity guided Spamton to some special place where he accessed the information that has since gone missing? If so, why isn't this quest for hidden knowledge ever brought up? And if this theory is arguing that Spamton got this special information from someone other than the phone entity, then who could possibly have given it to him? Furthermore, the fundamental assumption of this theory is the idea that Spamton can only discuss topics if he has direct access to the data on on those topics, which is an assumption that we have no real grounds for. At no point in the cyberworld is it implied that darkners based on computer programs can only access information in their memories if that information is still present on the computer they reside in. This assumption also implies that all the things that Spamton talks about, including Cungaderos, hot singles, and all the other absurd sales slogans, are still available as data on this computer, which seems both dubious and contrived.
Though then again, I mean, there was the whole thing of, you had that one, I forget what the name of it was, but you had that one NPC talking about how Queen seemingly went nuts after she lost connection to the internet. But at the same time, I mean, actually, wait, is your search history stored on your computer? I would think it is, so that way she'd still have access to people's search histories, but not the internet itself? Maybe?
Overall, missing data theory fails for the same reason string theory did. It answers too little and raises too many questions. Next is Toby Fox theory, which is probably the least useful theory in this video. At least with the other theories, they provided some sort of in-universe explanation for why Spamton says Hyperlink Blocked.
Nope, then this one is just Toby Fox.
It literally just argues that Spamton says Hyperlink Blocked because Toby Fox wants him to. Which, I mean, yeah, that's true, but it's also completely meaningless and doesn't answer any of the questions surrounding this phrase. You could explain any mystery in Deltarune with Toby Fox said so, and it would technically be true while also saying nothing at all. So, yeah. And last in this category is the mental block theory, which definitely has some advantages. Namely, it's well established that Spamton is suffering from some pretty severe mental illness, which means the idea of him suppressing traumatic memories is quite reasonable. That said, I'm not sure how logical this being a mental block is within the context of Hyperlink Blocked. Spamton seems to remember exactly what Hyperlink Blocked is and what it can do, which would suggest that his memory isn't suppressed at all. You could argue that this is just how suppressed memories work for a computer program, but the idea of mental illness affecting darkners differently has no real evidence. As such, while I appreciate this theory trying to tie Spamton's mental illness into the mystery of Hyperlink Blocked, I don't think this argument has a ton of proof. That's all of the multiple concepts theories covered. You can now see that there are a number of overarching issues with all the theories in this category. Namely, they don't provide any meaningful answers to the questions at hand. They all just hypothesize about some potential context surrounding Hyperlink Blocked without having any conclusive stance on what the phrase actually means. It being tied to the entity pulling his strings, or some sort of missing data, or it being hidden behind some mental block are all theories more focused on elements of Spamton's backstory than anything else. Which is fine, that's a valid avenue of theory crafting, but it's not very useful or compelling when it comes to discussing Hyperlink Blocked itself. It seems to me that the people who ended up in this category generally don't think it's possible to solve Hyperlink Blocked using the information we currently have, which is why there are no definitive answers in any of these theories. That brings us to the largest and final category of theories we will be analyzing today. Now, in order for a single concept theory to stand up to scrutiny, there are two criteria that it will need to meet. The first criterion is that the term needs to fill the role that Hyperlink Blocked holds in this story. Namely, it needs to be something that both Chris and Spamton want, something Spamton is promising Chris as a reward, something that Chris makes in the Snowgrave route, something that Spamton can upload to the empty disk, and something that Spamton can have a little bit of in the morning. The second criterion we will be considering is whether or not
the word is murder. Spamton can have a little bit of murder in the morning, as a treat.
Spamton uses the term anywhere else in his dialogue. For example, one of these theories is the freedom theory, and yet Spamton uses the word freedom.
I literally said that before,
that may prove that Hyperlink Blocked can't be replacing freedom since Spamton uses the term elsewhere. We don't actually know if Hyperlink Blocked prevents Spamton from using these terms in general, or if it only blocks him from using them in specific contexts. But since it would be rather strange for Hyperlink Blocked to only function sometimes, I will judge a theory more favorably if it argues that Spamton is using a term that he never says anywhere else. This second criterion isn't a hard rule, but it is a useful guideline. With these criteria in place, let's dive into the single concept theories.
Again, it's not going to be coffee, I know this.
I'm going to save us all some time and eliminate some of the weaker theories immediately. Drugs, coffee, big shot autos, big shot soda, and peepus are all pretty clearly incorrect.
I mean, you never know. As I said, somehow, maybe in the weird route, doing all of that somehow gives Chris a lifetime supply of coffee in the morning. Who knows?
Either Chris doesn't want them, Chris doesn't make them in Snowgrave, Spamton frequently uses them in dialogue, or they just generally fail to function as a meaningful narrative payoff. The rest of the theories, while certainly varying in quality, deserve at least a little more attention. First is determination theory. If determination is as powerful as it was in Undertale, then it would make sense that Chris and Spamton would want it, as it may be exactly what they need to cut the strings that are controlling them. Spamton promising to give Chris determination is a little strange, but it's not out of the question. We know determination can be achieved through artificial means thanks to Flowey. Alternatively, this could be read as foreshadowing of Spamton planning to absorb Chris's soul. Perhaps Spamton intends to grant Chris access to his determination by forcing them to fuse together.
Again, Omega Spamton.
As for how Chris is making determination in the Snowgrave route, Spamton implies that it has something to do with Noelle, and that makes sense. In every route of this game, Noelle has to go through an arc where she becomes stronger and more assertive. Heck, Queen's entire plan
the power of determination,
on building up the determination inside Noelle so that she can create a Neo-Dark Fountain. As such, you could argue that Chris is doing something very similar by forcing Noelle to become stronger. Maybe this boost in confidence is granting her a greater quantity of determination. Conversely, you could argue that Chris completely dominating Noelle like this should realistically be draining her of determination. Remember, determination is all about choosing your own destiny, and Noelle may be getting stronger, but she is most certainly not the one deciding her own fate. As for Spamton uploading it to the empty disk, this makes sense, as determination is part of you. Spamton is uploading his very being, so it adds up that he's uploading his determination as well. That just leaves the question of whether Spamton has used the word determination anywhere else, and the answer seems to be no. In fact, Queen is the only one to bring up the concept thus far. As such, overall, determination theory has a lot of strengths. It somewhat wavers in the context of Snowgrave, as it's unclear whether Noelle is really gaining or losing determination, but otherwise this theory passes all my criteria.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was literally a video I watched a while ago, specifically, I think it was by Andrew Cunningham. Yeah, I think it was one of his videos where he was specifically talking about the lack of the word determination used anywhere in Deltarune. When it comes to, like, save points or stuff like that, when Undertale, it was used everywhere, basically.
Also, given that determination is first reintroduced in Chapter 2, it would make sense for Toby Fox to obscure its importance in this story by having Spamton avoid using the term. From a purely pacing point of view, this is a fitting concept to go for. That said, we've got quite a few more theories to look at, so let's see if any others can give determination theory a run for its money. Next is freedom theory. Freedom is definitely something Chris and Spamton both want, and it's definitely a reasonable reward for Spamton to be promising Chris.
Yeah,
However,
but Spamton uses
promises
the
to
word
give
freedom.
Chris all of his hyperlink blocked, and given Spamton values freedom so highly, it doesn't really make sense for him to be offering to give up all his freedom as a reward. It's also
Chris,
extremely
yeah.
unclear how exactly Chris could be making freedom during the Snowgrave route. You could argue that gaining power is, in a way, Chris working towards gaining freedom, but they certainly don't attain it by the end of this chapter, so I don't think it really makes sense in this context. As for it being something Spamton can upload, since he is imprisoned on the empty disk, you could argue that Spamton is uploading his freedom, but that's a really weird way to phrase it if so. And then there's the issue of Spamton actually saying freedom multiple times.
Yeah,
in
there
fact,
we are.
During the Snowgrave route, he uses Hyperlink Blocked and freedom in the same paragraph.
Freedom sauce.
He specifically talks about how making Hyperlink Blocked will lead to freedom, but not that it is freedom on its own. As such, while I would say freedom is a highly important concept in Deltarune as a whole, and it's certainly an adjacent concept to Hyperlink Blocked, I don't think
it
they
unfortunately
are one and the
is
same.
freedom.
Next is EXP theory. EXP can lead to leveling up, which increases your power, which could, in turn, help you cut your strings. So, in a very roundabout way, this could be something that Chris and Spamton both want. That said, whether it's a reasonable reward for Spamton to be offering Chris is a whole other story.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, and that's on top of the whole thing that, we've seen, Chris and Susie growing more powerful outside of combat, even if you do, pacifist playthroughs, just by destroying the Dark Fountains. And also, just going back, so far, I'm thinking Determination probably is it, because that just seems to fit the best.
EXP does still exist in the light world of Deltarune, but the leveling system in the dark world is completely separate from it. This is why your light world LV doesn't change even if you do the Snowgrave route. As such, how Spamton could offer this as a reward and how exactly Chris could be obtaining EXP during Snowgrave are both unclear. At best, you could argue that Noelle gains EXP through killing Birdly, but even that's up for debate. As for Spamton uploading his EXP to the empty disk, again, we have no reason to believe EXP even exists in the Dark World. Furthermore, we have no evidence that Spamton has ever killed anyone. As such, the only advantage this theory really has is that Spamton never says EXP at any point. Overall, this is a flawed and messy theory that relies on a ton of assumptions to even get off the ground.
Yeah.
Next is power theory. As we've discussed, power is certainly something that Chris and Spamton want. It's also a reasonable prize for Spamton to offer. It's established that Chris gains power during the Snowgrave route, and it makes sense for Spamton to upload his power to the empty disk. However, Spamton uses the word power several times, and while this theory works fairly well with our requirements, this may simply be a consequence of power being such a broad and generic concept. Whatever Hyperlink Blocked is, it must grant some type of power just by the definitions we've established for it, but that doesn't mean power itself is the word being used. There's also no clear reason why Toby Fox would bother replacing such a generic word with Hyperlink Blocked. Overall, power theory is feasible, but it's also rather uncompelling in my opinion. Next
it's rather boring.
Choice theory. Given their puppet status, wanting to earn the right to make choices makes sense for both Chris and Spamton. It also works as something Spamton would offer Chris as a reward. Furthermore, this line from Spamton during the Snowgrave route works really well, as the idea that Chris was making choices is pretty compelling. However, Spamton uploading his choices to the empty disk is a bit of an abstract concept, and Spamton Spamton also uses the word choice when offering his deals. He quite memorably insists that it's Chris's choice to accept or not. It would be rather odd for Spamton to offer Chris a reward of choices while also insisting that they already have a choice. You could argue that since the choice Spamton offers forces you to say yes, Spamton is just trying to show Chris how little freedom they actually have. Perhaps by giving Chris a choice where they have no choice, Spamton is implying that Chris needs the choices that Spamton is offering. That could be a clever bit of subtext to this scene, but it's way too many layers deep into interpretation for me to really find it super compelling. Overall, I do like the way choices fits into this line, and it is thematically appropriate, but its genericness as a term and its inconsistency in its usage prevents me from regarding this theory too highly. Next is free will theory. This is effectively just choice theory, but less versatile. It makes sense that Chris and Spamton would want this, and it works as something for Spamton to offer Chris. You could argue that Spamton uploads his free will to the empty disk, however, Chris doesn't really make free will during Snowgrave.
That doesn't really work.
In fact, given how that entire route is framed as being unwanted both by Noelle and Chris, I'd say free will is getting subverted rather than created. It also doesn't make sense for Spamton to want a little free will in the morning, or that he'd offer Chris all of his free will if they helped him.
Again, that one little, just a little bit. I don't know why I find that so funny. I just do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not much more to say on this.
No, not really.
It has its upsides, but free will theory is mostly just a downgrade from choice theory. Next is chaos theory. Right out the gate, you kinda have to make some assumptions to believe Chris or Spamton really want chaos. Plus, given how Spamton seemingly hates Jevil, who is a known lover of chaos, that also hurts this reading. Spamton doesn't upload chaos to the empty disk unless you assume he literally views himself as chaos incarnate, which I don't. You could argue that Chris makes chaos during Snowgrave, and you could feasibly imagine Spamton wanting a little bit of chaos in the morning.
Just again, as a treat.
However, there's no clear reason for why chaos would allow Chris or Spamton to cut their own string. The only way to spin that is to once again say that Spamton wants power, which will allow him to pursue both freedom and chaos. But again, that's way too much extrapolation to be compelling.
And I really hesitate to believe that, that the unifying theme behind like all of the secret bosses would be chaos. Like, of course, chaos was a big thing with Jevil, but there was nothing really, with Spamton that's kind of themed around chaos, unless you just, imagine chaos as just being random, which at that point Spamton can be kind of random sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of stretching it though.
Overall, there's some fun concepts here, but it doesn't really work with most of the evidence. Next is control theory. This one is pretty good. Chris and Spamton both want control, and it makes sense that Spamton would offer this to Chris as a reward. Spamton could be feasibly said to upload his control to the empty disk thanks to his freedom being taken away. And since he plans to fuse with Chris, him promising to give them all of his control could be read as Spamton promising to give Chris full control of their shared body. However, the one noticeable weak spot in this theory is in Snowgrave. You could argue Chris is taking control of their life, but they're really not. If anything, they're just robbing Noelle of her control, which isn't really the same thing. Overall, control theory is...
you know what? Spamton does want a little bit of control in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm sorry I'm so hung up on that little bit. I love it, it's so funny.
Isn't quite on the same level as determination theory, but it's still pretty decent. Next is unknown power theory. This one is the idea that Hyperlink Blocked is referring to some new source of power that Toby Fox has yet to reveal to us. This is basically a more vague version of determination theory and power theory. Unfortunately, that just means it's less impactful than either of those theories.
Yeah.
Could Chris and Spamton want this secret power? Could Spamton be uploading this to the empty disk while enjoying it in the morning? Could Chris be creating this power in the Snowgrave route? We literally
Tune in next time to find out.
Have no idea. There being some new secret source of power is a fine enough idea, but it being hyperlink blocked just raises more questions while answering almost none. It could be absolutely true, but it's far from compelling at this point in time. Next is happiness theory. Chris and Spamton both want happiness, and it makes sense for Spamton to offer this as a reward. Since he plans to fuse with Chris, him giving his happiness to them adds up, and you could maybe argue that Spamton would want a little happiness in the morning. However, Spamton uploading his happiness to the empty disk doesn't really make much sense, as he's just not really a happy person. And why would he specify he's uploading happiness? It also makes zero sense in Snowgrave,
making happiness,
as while
yeah.
Chris does a lot of stuff in that route, making happiness is most certainly not one of them.
Yeah.
Overall, happiness theory is a decent idea.
I much more believe it was
thematically,
something
but
like terror or something like that if you're making it in the Snowgrave route.
but it doesn't really work well with most of the evidence. Next is death theory. Now, it really doesn't seem like Chris or Spamton would want this unless you're arguing that they want to kill people. And while that may be the case for Spamton, it seems a little more dubious for Chris. Chris certainly causes a lot of death during Snowgrave, and Spamton might want to cause death in the morning, but he definitely isn't uploading death to the empty disk.
I mean, you never know. It might literally just be a file named death.exe.
He never says death directly, but he does say kill. Also, while I'm no expert, the wiki claims that Spamton makes a ton of puns involving the word death in the Japanese version. As such, overall, death theory doesn't really work almost at all. It requires Chris be a much more monstrous person than I have any reason to believe. Next is destruction theory. This is pretty much the same deal as death theory. Does Chris want this? I doubt it. Does Chris create destruction in Snowgrave?
Very much
I
so,
guess.
yes.
Depends on your definition. Spamton might seek destruction, but he doesn't upload it to the empty disk.
He also can't really have a little destruction in the morning.
He admittedly never says destruction, but that doesn't really sell me on it. It's also just not meaningful enough to justify replacing it with hyperlink blocked. Destruction theory gets a thumbs down from me. Next is strength theory. This is really just power theory with a different coat of paint. Do Chris and Spamton want this? Yes. Does Chris gain strength during Snowgrave? Yes. Does Spamton want strength in the morning? That's a little more dubious, but it's not impossible. And you could certainly argue.
I mean, I guess you could say, you could use it in that context. I mean, what is it when, so something's bad happening, like someone who's more religious would be like, Lord, give me strength. Or he's like, give me strength in the morning, Lord, that sort of stuff. But, Spamton doesn't really come off as the type of being religious, apart from that one part of him saying he wants to be in heaven. So, yeah.
That he uploads his strength to the empty disk. That said, he does say the word strength once after you defeat Spamton Neo. So, yeah, given the generic nature of the term and the fact that he says it at one point, I don't think strength theory is a strong contender. And yes, that was a pun. Next is something new theory. This theory argues that hyperlink blocked is replacing the words something new. How does this theory hold up? Well, Chris and Spamton wanting something new makes sense, and Spamton offering something new to Chris as a reward is also feasible. Spamton.
But then there is the whole thing of how does Spamton put his something new on the disk, unless he's using the word something new as a euphemism.
Could want something new in the morning, and Chris making something new in the Snowgrave route seems to be true. However, it doesn't really make sense for Spamton to promise Chris all of the something new he possesses, nor does it make sense for him to upload his something new to the empty disk. It also seems odd to bother replacing such generic words. Spamton never says something new, but I don't think that makes up for this theory's shortcomings.
Yeah.
And with that, we've covered all the theories that my community had to offer. Or rather, almost all of them. Eagle-eyed viewers may realize that one of the single concept theories has yet to be discussed, and that's because said theory is the one that I fully agree with. That's right, for the first time, maybe ever, my theory is just an expanded version of something that you clever viewers suggested to me. Thank you for the tip. That said, if you thought this theory would be sane because it has its roots outside of me, then you've got another thing coming.
Oh, God.
The theory that I agree with, and the theory that I will be embracing as the true answer to the Hyperlink Blocked mystery is love theory. This option fits all the criteria so perfectly that it's hard to deny as the definitive choice.
Wait, are we saying love as in, I love you, or love as in level of violence? Maybe both, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
This is due in no small part to the fact that this term can be read as both love and level of violence. This gives it a degree of versatility that the other theories typically lack, while also grandfathering in a ton of legitimacy thanks to the importance of love in Undertale. For the sake of clarity, I'll refer to regular love as just love and level of violence as LV. Without further ado, let's look at the evidence. Given their extremely sad and lonely existences, Chris and Spamton both wanting love makes perfect sense. And since increasing your LV makes you more powerful and power could help them cut their strings, Chris and Spamton wanting LV also makes sense. Spamton offering love as a reward can be read as both a deranged promise of friendship and as a foreshadowing of Spamton planning to fuse with Chris, in effect sharing his love.
But at the same time, something like that, if that was the case, like you're talking about like actual love, not LV, like that is exceedingly sad. Because, well, I mean, before you even go into the Dark Worlds, like that would mean that Chris feels that, they're not getting any love at home from Toriel, and also, potentially also from, Asgore not being there, or living there anymore, and, Asriel being at college. Maybe, maybe at the same time, from, like, their friendships with Susie, though also that itself might be proven wrong by, Susie and Rousey coming in and helping Chris with the boss fight as well, and helping beat Spamton? It's been established that both the emotion of love and your LV are all tied up with your soul. So this deal being all about Spamton's plan to fuse his soul with Chris's soul works really well. But where things get spicy is on the weird route. The idea that Chris quote unquote makes love on the Snowgrave route has multiple connotations. Oh, God. And given that it's, also with Noelle, somebody that they had a friendship with in the past, and there was the whole thing that I remember somebody talking about, like, how the weird root seemingly forces a heteronormative relationship on Noelle, even though she is most likely, at the very least bi, or, most likely lesbian with her, crush with Susie. So yeah, very big abusive relationship flags right there.
Firstly, Chris orchestrates the slaughter of a bunch of Darkners, as well as Birdly, which is absolutely the sort of behavior that would raise your level of violence. Furthermore, Sans describes LV as follows. The more you kill, the easier it becomes to distance yourself. The more you distance yourself, the less you will hurt. The more easily you can bring yourself to hurt others. Given Noelle's increasing confidence in battle, her increasing comfort with killing, and the fact that she doesn't complain even when the Thorn Ring does substantial damage to her, I'd say this paragraph describes Noelle in the weird route perfectly. There's quite a bit more evidence to suggest that Chris and Noelle are making LV in this route, but I think you get the point. The parallels between the Snowgrave route and the Genocide route are too numerous for anyone to deny that LV is likely involved. Secondly, the idea that Chris was making regular love in the weird route may seem a bit dubious, but if you really look at the content of Snowgrave, the romantic connotations are pretty blatant. I'll go ahead and list it all off for those who missed it. As part of this route, you give Noelle multiple rings, which are commonly used as a symbol of forging a bond, such as marriage. Rouse even comments on this, as if you try to give him Noelle's snow ring, he asks if Chris is proposing. Notably, you can't get access to this ring unless you do at least the beginning portion of the weird route, further tying this romantic concept to Chris's behavior in said route. Furthermore, Chris insists that Noelle and them are something other than friends, and they do this in response to Noelle denying that she needs the dating shoes that the Addison is selling. During this route exclusively, you can twice insist that Noelle will ride with Chris on the Ferris wheel, which is a ride that is heavily tied with romance in this very chapter. When going to the hospital in the light world, Noelle notices Chris first and Susie second, which is the opposite of how it goes in the normal route. This could suggest a shift in romantic priority in Noelle's mind from Susie to Chris. Upon talking to Noelle, Chris can claim to be there to see her. And while not as evidently romantic due to the tone of the scene, us being able to whisper Noelle's name and have her save us from certain doom would be quite romantic in any other context. And for the cherry on top, Noelle admits to liking things that scare her, which is often used in the fanbase to explain her attraction to Susie. However, given that she explicitly and frequently describes how scary Chris is during the weird route, that exact same logic could be used to give this relationship a romantic spin as well. To be clear, this isn't me selling you on a ship or anything like that. This is me simply pointing out how Chris quote-unquote making love in the Snowgrave route can be read as both LV and as regular love. The romantic connotations of that route are there whether you like it or not. Now, obviously, the sexual version of the phrase making love is not applicable here.
Hopefully, yeah. I hope to God so.
But it does make sense for Spamton to use such an inappropriate phrase. Even his choice to call Noelle a hoochie mama is itself raunchy, as in this context, it is clearly a corruption of the term hoochie mama. For those who don't know, this is a slang term people use to describe a lady who is, open to relationships.
Oh god, this is all starting to make me dirty. I feel dirty and ugh. And on top of that, how old are they again? Like, I know that like Chris, Susie, Noelle, Birdly, all of them, they're teenagers, but I can't imagine them being more than like 15 or 16. Like, is it ever confirmed how old they actually are in the game? No, yeah, it's never been confirmed anywhere, so. Oh, why do you have to put those thoughts in my head? Sorry. Ugh.
To put it less nicely, it's a term used to objectify, sexualize, and otherwise debase women. The point being that Spamton likes to frame things that are innocent, like Noelle, as being sullied and adult. This is likely due to his own innocence being savagely exploited by everyone he ever met.
okay, so sorry, I had to pause here because I just noticed, with the way his hair is, I just noticed, like, with this, I don't know what you call it, but does Spamton have a mullet?
This desire to pervert innocent ideas extends to Hyperlink Blocked. It is not accurate to say Chris and Noelle were making love, but it is 100% in character for Spamton to mock young love with crass and rude terminology. Now, if you find viewing Noelle and Chris's relationship as love too distressing, you can interpret the word making in this context to be emphasizing how this love is artificial. Chris made this relationship through manipulation, rather than through anything natural or healthy.
Yeah.
But taking a step back for a moment, there's another Hyperlink Blocked.
Though, I will say, I remember years ago, I did, go, as I said before, as stated before, Chris and Noelle used to be, friends when they were little. So I do remember, years ago at this point, I did go scouring for like a month or two, just looking for, Noelle and Chris stories, just because I liked the idea, because at the time I liked the idea of, two childhood friends that had kind of distanced themselves, came back together due to extraordinary circumstances and started having a blossoming relationship. Though then again, that does kind of push aside the whole, Noelle and Susie thing, so that's kind of part of the reason why I kind of fell off that, but
we can knock out. You see, Spamton has never been a stranger to making adult references and metaphors. Look no further than Enlarge Yourself for evidence of that. But this also very handedly explains the most baffling instance of Hyperlink Blocked. Spamton wanting a little love in the morning makes perfect sense, although I have my doubts that he's talking about a kiss on the cheek. Moving on quickly from that line of thought, Spamton uploading his love to the empty disk works quite well in this soul-oriented context. Not only is he uploading his very being onto the disk, but he's also putting his complete trust in Chris, which could be read as an act of love. Spamton asks...
Actually, wait a second, I just thought of something. What happens if you never actually complete that? Like, what happens if you go through all of the things to get Spamton onto the disc, and then never actually put him in the Neo body? Like, is there anything weird that happens when you complete the chapter and you just have the disc sitting in your inventory space? Like, I know it's a key item, but still, like, does anything weird happen from that?
Asking Chris to like and subscribe for more love can obviously be read as Spamton reminding Chris to stick to their deal and ensure their friendship. But you could also take it a step further. You could say this is a reference to how YouTubers often go on and on about how appreciative they are of their viewers. They might even say they love them. For example, I love that you have watched this much of my video. Like and subscribe for more Jaru content. Furthermore, this next Hyperlink Blocked makes so much sense, it hurts. Before you know it, we will be taking a ride around town on our special Congadero, vacationing and burning acid while you soak in the love. Soaking it in is an extremely common turn of phrase, and love being the thing Chris is soaking in works so well here that it feels very deliberate. Given how many trophies Azrael has and how often people talk about him, it seems pretty clear that Chris has received far less praise and adoration than their brother. As such, Chris wanting to soak in the love and finally get some of that praise feels very believable. In addition, Spamton promising to give Chris all of his love also makes sense, as not only would Spamton be eternally grateful, but he would literally be giving Chris his love by merging their souls. He's giving Chris his entire being, LV included. And of course, to top it all off, Spamton never once says the word love in any of his dialogue, making it a perfectly viable case candidate for Hyperlink Blocked. But wait, I can take it a step further.
Wait,
as
how?
There's one final question that needs to be asked. Would Hyperlink Blocked acting as a replacement for love actually contribute to the narrative of Spamton? Would him being unable to say the word love have significant and meaningful connotations? And the answer to that question is yes, obviously. There's a reason I did my character analysis of Spamton before I did this analysis. And here is the payoff.
I need to watch that,
As
aren't
you
I?
likely recall, Spamton's story is one of tragedy, betrayal, and loneliness. He was abandoned by everyone who ever knew him, and for no good reason. They should have been his friends, but instead they left him behind like he was nothing. And when he fell from grace, nobody tried to lend a hand, even when they knew he was suffering. If there's one vital resource you can say Spamton was never afforded, it's love. No wonder he can't bring himself to say the word. It was blocked from him all his life. Spamton mocking the concept of romance also makes perfect sense. He looks out on the world with a broken heart, full of bitterness. Having one of his core missing elements be love is just too perfect to pass up. And of course, this can also be applied to LV as well. From everything we've seen in both Dark Worlds, killing Darkners properly is difficult, even for a Lightner. And say what you will, but we never hear about King or Queen killing anybody, only imprisoning them. And they only even did that after the Dark Fountains appeared. It's entirely feasible that gaining LV was simply not possible for Spamton at any point prior to this, either due to his weakness or due to the nature of his world. And if his tragic life works as justification for him not having love, then it works just as well for explaining why he'd want to hurt a lot of people. He makes it extremely clear that he is a very angry man, and you can bet there's a lot of people on his kill list for once he becomes Neo. In short, LV being something that is blocked from Spamton, yet is also something he is pursuing, makes perfect sense for his character. To summarize my theory as a whole, Hyperlink Blocked is given too much emphasis and significance in Chris and Spamton's relationship for it to not be meaningful. It doesn't make sense to be taken literally, which means it's replacing something. Its usage is too narrow for it to be replacing an entire category of topics, and there's no narrative payoff for having it be so vague. That just leaves single concept theories, and while some of these have merits, especially determination theory, none of them have the sheer narrative potency of love. Love doubling as LV gives it versatility both in how it adds enormous subtext, but also in how it enhances the narrative for Chris, Noelle, and Spamton. And while some other options can fit decently well, only love fits every single instance of Hyperlink Blocked to a T. As such, the official Jaru stance is that Hyperlink Blocked is replacing the word love. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. It certainly took me a while to return to the Spamton mega analysis, but I got there in the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is one of the more grounded theories I've put together, so I'll be curious to see what the community thinks. This also means that I am now much better prepared to do a Chapter 2 lore playthrough, so I hope you're looking forward to that. Before I sign out, I'd like to thank the fine folks on my Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it does work. And again, that whole, the creepy iterations of, you know, the love, quote-unquote, between Noelle and Chris in the weird route. Oh, God. Why? Why? Again, the idea that one of the things Chris is looking for isn't so much just freedom, but just love and acceptance. Because again, like, Chris is adopted, and I mean, from everything I've heard, there is the tendency for adopted children to you know, not feel whole or feel, you know, ostracized from their family just because they know they're adopted. And from what we've seen, it did seem that, you know, Toriel and Asgore did have trouble with Chris when they were younger. Whether it just be the fact that, you know, Chris was asking, oh, when are my horns going to grow in? Or the fact that, you know, Toriel borrowed the books on how to take care of humans. And then there's the whole thing with, like, Chris having, like, no awards or anything on his side of the room. Which I very much hesitate to believe it's because they were never given the opportunity to. But possibly, maybe it might have been, like, almost a form of self-sabotage. Like, they saw Azrael getting all the love and attention, getting all these awards, and maybe they just never thought that they'd be able to ever, like, reach the same level, so they never went out and even tried to go out and join clubs or join sports to win, you know, trophies of their own. And that's really sad and depressing. Yeah, that's going to be it for now. So, yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Or in our video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.